Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. How many of you are first time here? Okay, welcome. So we're starting a little bit late, but we'll go for about 2 hours, and this is interactive, and we'll do the actual energy transfer about an hour into it. And before that, we'll tell you, for those of you who are new especially, tell you a little bit about our background and what we're going to be doing here. And then after the energy transfer, we'll have a little bit of time to talk and answer any questions. So if you have any questions about anything, feel free to jump in and ask. Are any of you totally unfamiliar with our organization, Flower of Life, and the Expo? And some of you, okay. So Flower of Life is an organization we started some years ago, and we have a lot of different projects in Flower of Life. And this is, our local events are just one element of what we do. But we have our largest public event is the Awaken Empowered Expo, which we put on here in Detroit, in downtown Detroit. Next one's coming up in November. And we rent out a whole floor of a hotel there, and we bring in different speakers from all over the world to speak on subjects from consciousness to health and science, technology, archaeology, people who are doing breakthrough work in all of these fields. Michaela is there doing channeling. I will be there as well doing different things. So our expo is our one large event that we do every year, and we also have exhibitors there from a variety of different backgrounds who are also there doing different things. So if you want to come to that, our tickets are available. You can check that out at our awakenempowerexpo.com. But we also have a TV show that I have. It broadcasts actually Saturday nights, so tonight from 7 to 9 p.m. And sometimes we do broadcast these events on that show. But I have different guests on the show who are from a variety of backgrounds similar to what we have at our expo as well. And I'd like to, if we have time, talk about some of that in a few minutes. And we have a youth project. Michaela mentioned that earlier. We're working on redoing that and launching a new kind of school for kids. And we're also in the beginning stages of a community project that we're working on. A variety of other things taking place as well. We have a magazine and many other things. So get involved in any of that if any of that interests you. And we have quite a variety of things. If you are interested in any of the archives of our old shows, you can just search my name on YouTube. We do archive all of our shows on YouTube, so any particular area that interests you, you can keep yourself busy for many months worth of content. Our show launched originally, actually, Valentine's Day 2 years ago, so there have been quite a few episodes since then that are up there. Lots of fascinating topics. So today we're here to do an energy transfer, and if you've watched the videos, we do record these. I don't put them all out on YouTube, although all of Michaela's sessions are put out there. But what you'll find is that people who watch the videos, the energy transfer, also have similar experiences from the videos as well. And what we're here to do is to help to shift your level of awareness, your level of consciousness, and the frequency on which your vibrational body is connecting to reality. And so we're going to move that up a little bit. And the effects of that are going to be, you're going to experience your reality very differently. You'll have access to higher dimensions of your multidimensional DNA, which can manifest a number of different ways. We've had people with serious health issues the health issue went away after one session. But some of the other manifestations are, you may notice that your spiritual gifts open up, things that you didn't know were there will start to open up. And so the effects can be quite a variety of things. Essentially, each of you are right now, as before you came here, you are tuning into one version of reality. And each of us is tuning into slightly different versions of reality. We may all be living in this same physical three-dimensional world, but our realities are subtly different. And they're different based on the frequency that we're tuning in. In a similar way as there are different radio channels and TV channels, and depending on which channel your device that you're using is tuning into, you're receiving different information. So if there are 1,000 channels on your satellite TV and you're watching a war movie and somebody's watching a love story, both of those are dimensional realities. But two people who are living in the same physical dimension are actually tuning into slightly different versions of it. One experiencing love and one experiencing war or whatever. And so in that way, each of your physical bodies is actually tuned slightly differently to elements of the multidimensional reality that you're living in. And that determines not only what you look like, but also the thoughts you think, the kinds of experiences you have, whether you have spiritual gifts or not. And what we're going to do today is we're going to change that frequency slightly. And the effects of that are you'll start seeing your world differently than before you came here. You'll start to experience different things. You may lose interest in things that you currently are doing, or people that are in your life may fall away in order to bring in new people and new experiences and a new version of the reality that you're living in. Those are all possible manifestations of what will happen as a result of today. Now, there are other physical manifestations. Your energy field will increase as well. You may notice changes in health. A lot of people I speak with, so this energy that is being facilitated through this physical body, it's not me that's actually doing it. This physical body has been prepared in this incarnation to work with a certain collective consciousness that moves an energy through it in order to facilitate this process. It's been happening all throughout my life since birth without my conscious awareness. And it's only been in the last several years that I've consciously started to come to that realization. And now, as a result, I do these energy transfer events, both here physically, on videos and webcasts, and even recordings of my voice or my pictures or videos of the energy transfer on YouTube, all contain that vibration. So it may seem a little hard to understand how a video of an energy transfer event can facilitate the same effect, but it does, because we are living in a multidimensional reality. So we're going to do this today, and when you come in person, it's a little bit more intense than the videos. And I also have people who participate remotely all around the world. And even last night and once a month now for the last 6 months or so, I've been doing a global event where I include the whole collective consciousness of the planet and everybody, without everybody's conscious awareness, to raise the consciousness of the entire collective. And that's been going on for several months now. And as a result of that, we should see some dramatic changes in the consciousness of the planet in the last several months, since about September, I think, is when we started doing that. So we've been doing that, and so there's, as far as I know at this point, there is no limit to the capacity of how many people can facilitate this at the same time. So we're doing this in a small group today, and I'm going to let Barb talk a little bit about why she's here first before we continue, and how really a lot of what I'm doing now in this work and many other things were catalyzed as a result of meeting her many years ago and all the many ripples that came out of that. So I'll let her share her story, and then we'll continue from there.
Okay. Well, hi everyone. I want to say first that the room, although I see the different colors, there's a overcast of like yellow, like we have a lot of beautiful soul energy that's like, it's kind of emanating from all of you. This last with Kayla's channeling was really awesome. It was just, and I think it's just kind of spread pretty much to everyone. We still have the different layers of the karmic soul energy, with everybody, in the different heights. I mean, some of us are, through the roof, through the race roof, but the rest of us are, in different stages, but, don't worry about it because each time you come, it grows. Well, I want to tell you that I was a preemie. I was a 7-month baby in the 40s, and I don't know which one. I don't know if I made the doctor famous or he made me famous. I'm not sure. But I survived. I was 21 inches long, and I was 4 pounds. That doesn't seem much now, but back then it was. And I went down to 3 pounds. And they had me in a little incubator. My mother said I looked like a starving skeleton from Africa. She says, you were just skin and bones, just nothing but bones. And so my dad had to bring milk to the hospital for a month every day. So they called him the milkman, which he wasn't overly fond of, but whatever. And because back then they didn't know about how oxygen in an incubator can destroy your eyes, I put a red overlay over my eyes to protect me. Now, a red overlay on your aura is for one of 3 reasons. It's a conscious decision for a child between birth and 3 that are put in a position that they have no control over, that, due to some type of harm. Well, I've had mine put on so I could protect my eyes because I had too much to do in this lifetime. And I mean, I still have things to do that, so I could not go through life being blind. Later, after, I don't think it was probably just within the year, they realized what oxygen can do to eyes and they changed the mix. But they also didn't believe in touch, so not only was I blasted oxygen in me, but I also wasn't touched. So, they just fed me and put me back and, that was it. So, the other 2 reasons for it is like physical abuse, in some form, sexual, physical abuse. These things are out of your control or something. The other one is another form of putting a baby in danger, and they don't have no control over being in danger. So they'll have a red overlay put on them. So there's 3 different types. And so that's why not everybody has a red overlay, just children, babies up to 3 years old who feel themselves in a situation where they can't they do not have any control, will put that on. So I just wanted to explain that. So I was raised just after World War II. My dad says I was before, too late for the Navy and too early for when he had another job. So I was before insurance. So they made sure they saved that I cost them $365 way back then, because I was in the hospital for so long. But I paid, being a responsible adult, I took care of giving it back in more than one way. I was adult at 2 years old. They called me the baby adult, and I kind of perceived myself as a Benjamin Buttons. Really, my friend says Ben Jane Buttons, because I was old. I was talking to people, grown-ups, just like I'm talking to you, but they're like, gosh, she's only 2, At 3, I learned to read on my own. And my mother, they didn't help me, but she said I started out with reading road signs and like the Burma shave, I would try to figure out what they were saying, and they'd kind of laugh at me, but she'd help me when I was trying to sound out words. And they had a magazine called Humpty Dumpty, where they'd have the word and they'd have like horse, and they'd write the horse and they'd show the horse. So you got the picture of exactly, what it was. So I said, I learned to read on my own. By fourth, I went to college. I didn't go to college. I started school. College in my mind. It felt like college. But I never really understood, the other children my own age. I just couldn't, just couldn't understand them because I was too old for them. When they were doing things, what are you doing that for? I just didn't get it. And at 6 years old, I became a third parent. I started, my mother, before she'd take me everywhere, but no, now I have to stay home and take care of my sister, and be a responsible adult, which I was, and they never had any problem with, doing that for me. And so, like I said, I was raised differently. So when everybody would glow, and on and off, and when I didn't see people glow anymore, I didn't see them anymore. And I'm like, I didn't figure it out back then. I'm thinking, what's up with that? But I didn't understand it until I actually had a person at work that came running up to me. And they were really scared, and I said, "What's wrong with you?" And I was throwing like magazines. We called those flats. I worked at the post office, so you break down the flats into different areas, and before you take them into because I worked in the PO box section, so you had to break them down in different sections because you didn't want to be running over here and then running over there. This is more efficient. So I thought, "Oh my goodness. He's not glowing. I think he's in trouble." So I went and hunted him down. I looked all over there, and I found that he went in the men's bathroom and died. Ooh, if you're not glowing, you're going to die. Okay. So after that, every time I got on an airplane, you're darn right, I said, I need to see the pilot and the co-pilot. Because if they weren't glowing, I was not going on that plane. So, which actually, really put me in good stead because we were on an airplane and we were coming back from Vegas, and the airplane dropped like 500 feet, and some of the luggage came down on people, and the oxygen dropped and everything. Everyone's screaming and crying. So I looked around everybody and I said, "Oh, you're all glowing. We're going to be just fine." The plane quieted down, and when we got to New York, I got a lot of, even back to Detroit, where I got a lot of thank you, So, so that, that's, it really did help me, for other things, but still I really didn't understand it. So then, once again at work, I had another experience. I had another coworker. We were walking out. We were on the midnight shift, taking our coffees, so we go back to work. And he went and had a heart attack, and boop, This is before we had 911, So it's a while ago. I'm not young. I can't help it. But so I goes and I said, "Oh, somebody can do CPR on him." I says, "He's still glowing." I says, "We can keep him alive." So I ran 2 doors down at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm banging on the fire hall, And so the guy grumpily comes to the door. He says, "We don't answer doors. We answer the phone. Ring." I said, "That's the phone. 2 doors down, post office. The person's, had a heart attack. Get over here." So they got over here, saved him, and he wanted to go back to work. I said, you had a heart attack. You got to go to the hospital, So why am I always the one that's telling people? I don't get it. But I guess it's just that responsible thing. And talk about responsible. My father wanted me he worked for Ford's. He wanted me to get one of their test cars. And he had a nice Mustang picked out. But oh no, this adult, I had to get a safe Comet sedan because that won't roll over and it's safe. It'll protect people. So, really? But that's how my life was. And now it's like I've worked a lot of jobs and I've been responsible. So now it's my time to just say whatever and just enjoy the rest of my life, just like a kid, one of my friends thought I turned into a 2-year-old. We went over to the Howl where they save the animals, and you could do donations and you could go see them in their cages. Well, we found a playground. And they had a sandbox, and they had like water paints, and they had xylophones and drums and a tree house, and I had a blast. I played like I never had, She says, "Wow," she says, "you're really," and I said, well, I just wanted to have fun, so, so, how we go through life. And, sometimes, we have our bumps in the road. So I decided that I wanted to go to a therapist to kind of talk about it. Well, I'm not going to go to just some plain one. I have to go to a woman that's out there, in left field, so I just wanted to try to something else. So I went to one and I was trying to deal with, if you ever worked at the post office, you'd know why I had to deal with some things because they taught by humiliation when I first hired in. So I learned all the things so I could train the future generation. And I trained a lot of people that went up to postmaster and above, So, talk about the responsibility person. I wasn't going to teach people by humiliation. There is no way to teach people. So I took the responsibility on. So I was dealing with stuff like that. And I was talking to this woman, and there's a bulletin board over here. And all of a sudden I saw this little thing jumping up on the top, then it flipped on the side. It was like jumping all around the bulletin board. So I looked at that and I thought, oh, that's pretty funny, I didn't know what it was. So she looked at me, she says, what are you laughing at? And I said, well, there's this thing that's going around the bulletin board. I said, I don't know what it is. She says, well, do you know what it is? She says, I dreamed I was in the land of two and I divided myself so that I could take a part of myself and go to each person, who I'm dealing with, so I could understand them better. And I was just thinking about what I was going to put on that bulletin board. So I goes, so you're more interested in the bulletin board than what I'm trying to talk to you about. She goes, well, she said she kind of like blew it over. She says, well, do you know what that is? I said, I haven't the faintest idea. I don't know what the thing is bouncing around there. It wasn't really glowing, but I really didn't think about it. It just looked like a little mouse. So she said, well, that's an aura. She said, I said, aura. So that's a new word. So then she wanted to teach me how to astral travel. For $35 an hour, I could learn. I said, okay, I really need to be around this lady, but I captured the aura part of it. So I thought, aura. So then I bought a bunch of books, so I wanted to read about auras. And then I found this lady called, she's come from California. She came to Michigan to teach about auras. Her name was Barbara Bowers. So I get into the room and I'm sitting way in the back, and when I feel uncomfortable, I turn into a turtle. I'm sitting in the back, just peeking my head out, I'm not sure, So, and all of a sudden she looks at me and she says, and you see him too. And then she brought me up to the front of the room, and of course I was the example for backing up everything she had to say, and then she got me her book, and she, I felt like I was being tutelized, she tutored me somewhat, especially in that class, and I felt everyone's looking at me like this, And at that time I was, uncomfortable, but not so much, because I had been around the deaf people, and they taught me how when people are like this at you, remember, we're back here, we love you and we support you. So it kind of made me stop worrying about what people are looking at. I just, the deaf people changed my life. I learned sign language in 6 months, and I ended up doing a lot for the deaf people. They're not hearing impaired, they are deaf. They said, we are not impaired, we just can't hear. And back in the 70s, early 70s, they didn't have a lot for the deaf people. So I filled that role until Lansing got busy and started getting more interpreters and more things to help them out. And once they got a lot of their questions answered and, moved on, I had to move on, So just, I'm always there to help boost out and let people go on. So anyway, I learned about the auras. And so I met somebody at a gas station. It had a car like mine, but a trailer hitch. So I thought, this little voice that we all have, if you don't talk to that person, you're always going to regret it. I said, okay. So I talked to them. I said, how do you have a trailer hitch on a PT? Because they aren't supposed to be trailer hitches on them. She said she had a Camco camper that, that a motorcycle could pull. And I thought, oh, all right, that makes sense. Something really light. So anyway, I got a card, and we got to be, talking to each other, and she decided that she wanted to take me to a raw food potluck. I'm going, ooh, raw food. I said, isn't meat, is it? She says, oh. I didn't know. So I went there. She said, no. She says it's like fruit and vegetables and nuts and stuff like that, and they combine it in different ways, and it's supposed to be really healthy for you. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep an open mind, but then again, I turned into a turtle again when I'm getting there. I'm like, oh, all these people, that we are food. But, they explained how they made it, what was in each one. I thought, well, I'll try that. I'm not trying that one, But anyway, I tried it. It was good, I suppose eventually I might try to be totally raw food, but I'm not there yet. I'm just not, I'm a little bit of a carnivore yet, I have to admit. I have, you get ingrained in the old ways, and it's hard to, switch it out totally. So anyway, at that raw food potluck, I saw him. And I said, oh my goodness, who is that, and what's his name? And she says, I need to talk to him before I leave. Well, why do you need to talk to him? I said, because I just do. I figured it wasn't anyone's business but his business. So I went up to him before we left. I said, you have the largest aura I've ever seen. I said, I equate you to Gandhi or some spiritual master. I said, you have a gift. And I said, you got to use it. Because everyone was so happy there. And I didn't know, is it the food or is it him? And I'm thinking part of it is him because, the food is, but it just... Well, no, some of it was good, but some of it was, but I really felt like, there was something about him that enhanced, the whole, it just made everything feel so much better. So then, of course, he's one of these people that he's got this blue in him, which people are skeptical. Yeah, right. Okay. He was telling me this stuff. So then he invited me over to his place, and then he showed me pictures of him when he was young. And he had that same huge aura when he was 9 years old. It didn't change. It was like, poof, And then he started doing the spiritual masters. Well, after you look at a bunch of them, they all look the same. But I was blue, green, purple, white, yellow, and I was consistent with all the colors, whatever I saw, I was consistent. When he went around again, I was consistent. So then he really started believing that maybe I knew what I was talking about. And then I had to give him a few other experiences, so, he got it. So then we started doing this testing. He decided to go over to the Troy Library, and we started our first energy transfer. And then it's just been kind of moving on since then. And, he's had me work at the expos, and I actually probably am going to do a class, but I have to get a few other things done before I get myself ready to give you a class. And, besides doing it at the expo, I want to do a class maybe by summer, we'll see, on showing people how to see their auras. So the first thing I want to do, to give you all that you're here, a little bit of a beginning, is you put your two fingers together. And then you kind of look at them, and then you slowly draw them apart, and you eventually will see a line, and that's your energy between your fingers. That is your aura. It's the first start of being able to see that. And I have, when I do my class, I have black, and I have a white background and a black background, because some people see better with a white background in the back, and other people see better with a black background in back. So this will just give you a little taste of what that's going to be like, and we probably give everyone a little aura reading and try to explain different ways you can see it, and give you some exercises, and because I believe everybody can see them, just like you believe everyone can channel. It's just our gifts are awakening more and more, and and the fact that you're here, obviously you want to learn. So, and with that, it's all you.
question, just real quick.
Okay.
So, I didn't even know this. I guess my daughter, my youngest daughter is, I'm not gonna say it right, synesthesia. She's always seen like numbers and letters as color, and music notes as color. And I didn't even know that was a thing. Was that something that you had growing up? Did you see letters and numbers as color?
There were times when I would, see, it's like in the music class, when people would sing, I would see, I wouldn't see an actual note, but I would see the vibrations of them and, yeah.
She doesn't even look at the notes. She just knows the notes by the color they are.
Right.
I had no idea, but I thought that was really cool. And I guess every number has a color. Like she actually is painting them now. Like each number has a color, each letter has a color.
Well, I mean, I don't think I know what the colors and the numbers are. I just, because remember she's an advanced. I'm just the like the start of the aura stuff, and different things I've seen, and I mean I had a young, crystal children? Yeah. I had one, I met, her mother had me come and meet her, and she sees little animals and bunnies and different things. She said I had an owl on me and a bunny around me and stuff. I can't remember what else she said. It's been a while. But, they're seeing more than I have, so I think each generation, as they go on and they get more enlightened and like she's got the gift of seeing the notes and the colors of the numbers, where I just see the colors, and and have the interpretation, but I would be intrigued to see what her numbers and colors would be. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else have a question? Okay.
Well, we're living in very interesting times, and last year we had a solar eclipse. I can't remember what month it was, but I think it was September. And it was an especially difficult one. So many people went through some turbulent times in the last months, and a lot of awakening happened through that. Of course, the whole presidential election and all of that occurred in that time period. We're having another solar eclipse tomorrow. And what's interesting about this eclipse is it's actually very different from the last one in that this eclipse, the sun and the moon are in alignment with the planet Neptune. And Neptune represents spirituality, consciousness, those kinds of things. So this eclipse is very representative of a dramatic shift in consciousness on the planet. Now, eclipses don't necessarily have an effect on our consciousness the instant that they occur. The effects and influence of those will be coming even the weeks before that. You'll usually see the effects of a solar eclipse several weeks or even a couple of months before the actual eclipse occurs. So we are in this very interesting pivotal time right now in the awakening of consciousness. And so right now there are very important things occurring, even though you may not be aware of it yet. But you'll be able to look back some months from now at this time and see that this was a critical time in our awakening. Now, what's interesting about that, and when Michaela talked about the eclipse briefly as well, is we are going through a very dramatic dimensional shift. And part of what you're here to do today is to facilitate that for yourselves. And as I've said, since September, I've been doing this with the collective consciousness of the planet to help in a dimensional shift. Well, I have this TV show. Any of you watch my show? Okay, cool. Thank you for watching. I have some very interesting guests on the show, and in a couple of weeks, there's an episode coming up on the Mandela Effect. Any of you hear of that? Okay. So some of you are familiar with the Mandela Effect, and the Mandela Effect is illustrating this dimensional shift. So let's play for those of you who are unfamiliar with it. Any of you watch Mr. Rogers when you were kids?
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the song? Do you know the theme song? What are the words?
Would you be my neighbor?
Right, but what does it start?
Can you just say?
Beautiful day. It's a
Okay, so it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, right? Is that how you all remember it?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you sure?
No.
Is that how you remember it? Okay. How do you remember it?
It's such a good feeling to know you're alive.
Yeah, it's just like it's a beautiful day, but it wasn't. Those were not the words after that. There was something else about just being a neighbor, but not just a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Not just that.
Okay, but is
That's
that?
part of it?
But that's part of it.
That is
Okay,
part of it.
so you all remember that as part of it, right?
Yeah.
Go to YouTube and watch the original episodes of Mr. Rogers. That's not actually the first line.
No.
It's
What is it?
It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.
No.
Doesn't sound right, right? So this is the Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect is showing us that we've actually experienced a dimensional shift in our reality. So all of you remember that, and what sense does a beautiful day in this neighborhood even make, right? In that song, it doesn't even sound right. And so we're starting to see different effects like this in our collective consciousness that we all remember differently than what it actually is. So if you watch the original episodes, even if you have a DVD or a VHS of the original episode, you'll find that it is not actually what that was. So what actually happened is somewhere along the way, we've shifted timelines. And that shift in timeline, there's a different reality that we're experiencing now in this three-dimensional world that is not the reality that we experienced when we were growing up watching that show. So you're now living in a slightly different version of reality. And this is what the dimensional shift is that's occurring, that everybody is talking about and asking about. That makes a lot of things available to us. I get asked a lot of times, because I've been an astrologer for a long time, well, if you're born with a chart, you're stuck with that chart. And yes, that's true. That was the experience that you came here to experience. But if all of a sudden Mr. Rogers' song is different, then that means that it's possible that your chart could change too. And you may have a memory of it being different when in fact it's actually a very different chart than you were born with. So we now have the capacity to experience a very different version of reality than we were born with. There are many other examples like that. For example, let me think of another one that any of you watch?
Isn't there one Star Wars?
Yes, I don't know how many of you are really big fans of Star Wars. Any of you big fans?
Really?
Big, like. No, I mean, but you have to. I've watched them, but I'm not a really big fan, so I couldn't have remembered that well enough. Where Mr. Rogers, I watched it as a kid, so I remember the show and the song. Let me ask you, and you may not know if you're not a big enough fan, but in the original Star Wars, you know who C-3PO is? Okay. What color was the metal of his?
Gold.
Gold? Was it all gold?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Watch the original episode of the very first Star Wars. It wasn't all gold. He has a silver leg. Oh. But anybody who's a big fan of the show will tell you that the silver leg didn't actually happen until the third episode. It was replaced in the third episode. But if you watch the original episode now, it actually has a silver leg.
Huh.
So there are a lot of interesting things like that are starting to manifest in our reality that did not exist in our memory of the reality. Now, our memory transcends the three-dimensional world. So you may remember a reality that didn't actually occur in this timeline. So we're now walking in a timeline that did not actually occur to us when we experienced it originally, when we experienced those things originally. We're starting to see these examples in very small manifestations, like certain brands or TV shows or things like that once were another way and are now different. But the effects of that are going to start affecting or showing up in much, much larger things as we go forward to affecting every fabric of our reality. So there are a lot of very fun things like that. Another one, any of you watch Sex and the City?
Mm-hmm.
So, any of you big fans of the show?
A million years ago.
Okay, but so what's the name of the show again?
Sex in the City.
Are you sure?
Is it in the?
City.
Random.
Is it which is it?
Sex and the City.
Sex in the City?
Yes.
You're sure?
What we thought.
It's not Sex in the City.
What is it?
It's Sex and the City.
No, that's not right.
Does that even make sense?
I didn't watch it, but that's not right.
That doesn't make sense, right? Look it up. The Sex in the City never existed. There was never a show
Huh.
called Sex in the City.
It is weird.
It has always been Sex and the City in this timeline.
Huh.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, right? There are a lot of interesting examples like that. Captain Crunch cereal. Any of you eat that when you were kids?
No.
Still do.
How do you Okay. For those of you who ate it as children and don't still eat it, how do you spell it? How do you spell Captain Crunch?
Right.
Is that how you remember it?
Yeah.
Okay. Some people don't remember it that way. They remember it spelled Captain. Okay. Well, that's the thing is people's memories are shifting, and some people are remembering one version of reality, and others are remembering the other. What about Forrest Gump? Remember that? What's the famous line? No.
Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Are you sure?
Not anymore.
So you're saying it's life is like a box of chocolates.
Yeah.
You're sure of that?
Yeah.
That's actually not what it was originally. It originally was life was like a box of chocolates. So, now these are just fun little examples of the Mandela Effect. It's been coined the Mandela Effect. There are lots of them, actually. These are just a few.
So, just a question. If you have the videotape and it says life is, originally it was life was?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
But the video will be different now because your timeline that you're experiencing now has shifted. So you moved from that original timeline to the new one, and in the new one, the video you have is from the new one.
Okay. Wow.
So, but your memory is of the old one because your memory travels dimensions, and so your memory is whatever it was that you experienced originally. Just like if you have multiple incarnations, some people remember their previous incarnations, even though they're not happening in this reality.
Like when I went to Boston, Massachusetts, and I knew all the streets. I'd never been there before, but I know, we go down here, and then there's the church. And I'm telling everybody where everything is, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I've never been here.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Barb's the comedy part of our
Yeah.
So that's a Mandela Effect. If you want to learn more about it, watch the show in a couple of weeks, and we get into it much more in depth. But it's fun, right? Very interesting. So I really love tangible ways of measuring what's happening in reality, because as Barb said earlier, I have blue in my aura, which makes me very skeptical. So it takes a lot for me to take a look at something and say, oh, well, that could be some really interesting evidence. And the Mandela Effect is showing us some really interesting, tangible evidence of a shift in timeline, a shift in reality that we've all experienced. Now, you can take these examples to your friends, and some of them are going to argue with you that it was one way and not the other, and others will argue with you that it was the other way and not this way. It's because everybody's memory is slightly different, and some people are actually from this timeline originally, or experienced this timeline originally, and others experience the other. But now they're sort of intertwining. Another interesting thing that came out of this interview that I did was, now this woman's done an immense amount of research into this area, and she said that 50 years ago, scientists were saying that we were in the Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, I'm familiar with that, actually. I've heard that before, too. The Sagittarius arm of the Milky Way galaxy is the outer edge of the Milky Way galaxy. And we know that at least science and spirituality are starting to confirm that as you get closer to the center of the galaxy, there is this hotspot of energy. And as you get closer to that center, the consciousness increases. So if you're at the outer edge of the galaxy, that means you're at the lowest consciousness that you could possibly be in the galaxy. And that's where we have been. And according to scientific research, that's where we have been, which is not surprising considering the history of our civilization. But apparently now scientists are saying we're in the Orion part of the galaxy, the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy, which is actually halfway in the middle of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, how is it possible that we could have moved from the edge of the galaxy to the middle of the Milky Way galaxy in a span of 50 years? But what's interesting about that is it's also speaking to the possibility that we may have shifted dramatically in our timeline, and as a result, we've also accelerated in consciousness. And now, a lot of the ancient prophecies pointed to this time as a very critical time in our awakening. And many of them said we'd have cataclysms and earth changes and pole shifts and things like that right now. Why have those things not happened? It's possible that maybe we shifted to another timeline of experience where those things don't need to happen, and instead we're experiencing an age of enlightenment as we've moved into this closer to the center of the galaxy. And that could be why the Mandela Effect phenomena is occurring right now. And in the last 6 months, it's come out of nowhere, and all of a sudden it's even in the mainstream media. So, and in the last 6 months has been where a lot of these many global awakenings have occurred. And I've been doing my global energy transfers during that time. So there are a lot of things that have been happening in the last 6 months that would suggest an acceleration in consciousness. Now, you're all here. Obviously, you wouldn't be here if you weren't a little bit ahead of the curve as far as the collective consciousness, because we're drawn to vibrations that match who we are, and an event like this would not resonate with you if you were not ready for something a little bit more accelerated. And so you have a responsibility to take who you are out into the world and to share that. I don't mean necessarily speaking on stage, but just the being of who you are, the vibration of who you are, because the vibration of who you are is going to have a ripple effect on all of those around you. Part of what we do here today is going to be to change that reality. So much like the collective consciousness is now experiencing the Mandela Effect, you're going to experience that on a higher level, on a more advanced level. And in so doing, you'll tune into a higher dimensional level of yourself. Your own multidimensional genetics will be elevated today to where you'll have access to information and knowledge and energy that you didn't have before you came here, and where most people don't.
Well, I was just thinking, you said, we said it within the last 50 years. Look at how our technology has changed in the last 50 years. I mean, it's like we've been, everything's been accelerated from the primitive computer that filled a whole room to a phone that we can just, get pretty much all our computer access to just one little tiny device. Mm-hmm. So, I could see where, we could move. I mean, if we're consciously moving and evolving and making, cars that drive themselves and everything now, and everything. And I mean, they're learning about controlling cells and, stem cells and being able to make people walk again, that had their nerves, damaged. It just seems that, we could possibly move our Earth into, accelerated, that makes a lot of sense. Because I know had to be some reason, like we were poof, and I'm telling people, it wasn't like this in the 60s, you know. I said, you don't even know how much, you know, how much things have changed. So, you know, for the younger generation, I just had to throw that in there.
Well, what's interesting about that too is we are one of the interesting things that would be a manifestation if we were actually shifting timelines, and if it's true that we've moved to closer to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, then that would imply that our consciousness has taken not just a move up, but a huge leap up into a higher level. And that would also mean all this conversation about moving from a third dimension to a fifth dimension is really happening. And that would explain a lot of the technology we're experiencing, from three-dimensional printing to, as you move from the third to the fourth to the fifth dimension, time becomes less of a factor, which means your physical bodies don't necessarily have to age and get old and die at the same frequency. And we're starting to see even those kinds of realities, even through nutritional supplements and various technologies that are extending lifespan. So it's possible that in all of your generations, we may very well be able to live for an indefinite amount of time in these physical vessels that we brought into this life. It's already becoming possible. And with the invention of things like three-dimensional printing, the time it takes to manifest reality is shortening. If you want to buy an iPhone, in 10 years, you can print it out in front of you. You won't really need to go to a store to buy it or order it online and have it delivered to you. It can just three-dimensionally print. There are companies now that actually do that. If you you can go online and buy a particular product and go to someone locally in your area, and that product will be delivered digitally to them. They'll print it out for you in 3D. So we're starting to see energy or thought, vibration manifesting into 3-dimensional shape instantaneously. That is a manifestation of 4th-dimensional reality, because now the time that it takes to create is shortening. And we're going to see that in many levels. One of the great things about my life is that I get to be surrounded by amazing people in all different fields of work, like Barb. And so I get to see the kinds of gifts that people are starting to manifest, and the kinds of things that are coming down the line in our spiritual world that most people don't get to see at this early stage. And I get to work with people like that to help them to bring it out there. And I can tell you, there's some really, really amazing people out there these days, and some amazing things coming not only into our world through technology, but into our world through spirituality and through our spiritual development. So we are moving into an incredible age, even though watching the mainstream media, you may not know that. But mainstream media is just what's happening on the surface of things. Underneath that surface, there is an immense amount of incredible things happening. Anyone have any questions about anything so far?
What's the name of your guest?
Laurie McDonald. It will be airing 2 weekends from now. At least if we stay on schedule.
What channel?
It's called, the show is Awaken Empowered TV, and we broadcast on the Conscious Consumer Network, which is, you can watch it here live stream if you want. If you go onto Facebook and search for me, you'll be able to find the show, and so you can watch it live if you want. So tonight it'll broadcast live at 8 p.m. I'm sorry, 7 to 9 p.m. Yeah, I forgot. And then we put it out on YouTube, usually the same night. So tonight's show is actually a broadcast of the relationship lecture I gave a couple of weeks ago.
Which was awesome.
Yeah, so we're going into Venus retrograde right now, and Venus retrograde is, Venus represents relationships and also financial issues. And when Venus goes retrograde, we have to deal with karma in those areas. And so a lot of people struggle with relationship issues and relationship karma. People from your past lives will show up to teach you things. And so I gave a talk about relationships, and that will be broadcast tonight. And it'll be out on YouTube probably later tonight as well. So, and next week will be Michaela, and then the week after will be Lori McDonald. So, anyone else? We can do the energy transfer in a second here. We do, I forgot to mention, we don't charge for our events, but we do collect donations if you can donate, just to cover the cost of the venue rental, and then we put it toward our various other programs, whatever's left over. And Michaela will pass the basket out if you want to do that. And then while she's doing that, I'll share with you what we're going to go through for the energy transfer for those who are unfamiliar. So as I said earlier, my physical body in this incarnation has been prepared for this process. So I wouldn't suggest that you try this at home. It is something that I was prepared to do specifically. So a lot of healers, and I don't consider myself a healer, my work is specifically in the field of consciousness. That does not mean that you won't experience health benefits. You may. But my purpose here is to awaken people so that they can move into a greater aspect of themselves. So they can raise their consciousness and leave behind the dense energy that somebody asked a question about karma earlier when she was channeling. And she was talking about dense energy and how that relates to karma. Part of what we're going to do today is we're going to remove that dense energy, or at least however much you're ready to get released and let go of today. And we're going to raise your consciousness at the same time. The effects of that are many things, and we can talk about that more afterward. Now, my physical body's been prepared in such a way that I can actually take that energy from you, whereas most healers are very careful about protection and shielding themselves from negative energy. I don't need to do that. I can actually take the whole collective consciousness of collective dense energy without having any adverse effect to me. So at any given time throughout the day, there are people watching YouTube videos with me doing energy transfers who are sending negative energy to me. I have people who are sending negative energy, or dense energy rather, throughout the day through my remote programs. And there's no adverse effect to me. So part of what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to do that. So I'm telling you this because I don't want you to worry that anything negative is going to happen to me. In the process, we've been doing this for many years, and people all over the world are doing this, facilitating this through me at all times of the day. So I want you to be willing to participate and to do that when I ask you to. Do you have a question?
Do you actually feel that? Mm-hmm. Do you feel the energy coming to you? Or do you see it? Do you sense it? Or do you just know it's happening?
Well, we all have different superpowers. Right. And everybody's different. Barb can see auras. I don't have that superpower. One of the things that was strange for me when I was younger was I took different classes and different healing. And I remember taking a Reiki class a long time ago. This is when Reiki was brand new in Michigan. And the teacher was one of, I think, 2 teachers who was even teaching Reiki. And he was really good, very, very powerful healer. And I was taking this class, and there were only about 6 or 7 of us in the class, and everybody in the room is just bouncing out of their chairs because the energy is so intense. I couldn't feel a thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, there must be something wrong. And I talked to the teacher afterward, and I asked him, how come I don't feel anything? He said he didn't really know. Nobody had an answer. So I had that question mark throughout, for many years. I've been to many spiritual masters who are incredibly powerful, and everybody's just vibrating out of their chairs. I don't feel a thing. And so what I found out in recent years, so I've since been tested by dowsers and a variety of people, and what I found out is that this physical body has sort of a protection, or not a protection, but is not affected by energy outside of the energy that channels through it. Because of that, so I've had dowsers test dowsers who are very experienced at testing electromagnetic fields, and they can test electromagnetic or geopathic stress in an area. If I stand in that area, it goes away. So this physical body neutralizes all energy in its environment, whether it be dense or light or whatever. And because of that, I don't feel anything. And I didn't realize that when I was younger, that that's what was going on. But when I ask all of you to send me negative energy, I do feel that it's coming, but I don't feel it as negative or positive or anything. So I feel it as soon as I ask you to do it, there's a heaviness that occurs and I'm not trying to do it, it just happens. And I can always tell. So I have a sense, but I have no discomfort or feeling whatsoever about it. So I'm going to ask you to do that in a minute. And so it's a two-part process. I will ask you to release your dense energy. You can call it karma, you can call it whatever. It may be connected to experiences from past lives. It may be connected to poor diet. It can also be connected to other kinds of physical manifestations in your reality that have translated into energy in your energy field. So, for example, chemtrails, which are being sprayed in the skies all the time these days, are physical, but they have a vibrational effect on your body, and they are inhibiting people from their awakening. So we will be able to remove the effects of that as well. And this is why a lot of people who come to these events, they experience various awakenings and they start manifesting spiritual gifts they didn't know that they had, is because all these things in your environment that have been suppressing that, including your own karmic dense energy that you brought into this life, when those are removed, suddenly you start to step into who you came here to be. You start to become aware of things you didn't know were aspects of yourself. So part of it is that. And Barb will be able to see that. And that's one of the fun things about having Barb in the audience or here with me, is she can observe the audience and she can see that dense energy coming toward me and how it affects my energy field. And at the same time, I'm going to be sending a white light to your heart center. And she can also see that as well. And the intention of that is to raise your consciousness, your vibration, and shift your dimensional reality. So we'll be doing that. And one concern a lot of people have is what if my negative energy, or this person next to me, their negative energy hits me on the way to you? That's not going to happen. There is a collective consciousness. And if you want to know more about the collective consciousness, Michaela actually channeled that collective consciousness for me once on video. And it is on YouTube. So if you search Energy Transfers Ethan Fox, you'll see the video where I had a chance to speak directly with the consciousness, as well as my previous incarnations and the beings that I was involved with in those incarnations that brought me into doing this work this time. But there is a collective consciousness of many beings that facilitates this process through this physical body. And they have said that because I asked them, well, why don't you just do it yourself? Why do you need me? And they said that they need a physical body in this dimension in order to channel that energy. They can't directly channel the energy to everybody. So my role here is simply to be here to allow that process to happen through this physical body. So they'll be doing it. So you can't do it wrong as long as you have the intention to participate. You just simply need to sit there and follow the process, and it will happen. And Barb will be able to observe it. Anyone have any questions before we start?
So negative energies, anything and everything that we are maybe personally dealing with, including like physical feelings, mental, mind, body, everything.
Yeah, it's actually it's not necessary that you participate or that you focus on anything negative that's happening in your life. You can just simply sit there with the intention of releasing it, and that's good enough. But just because we're human beings and we like to attach things to ideas, it's perfectly all right for you to focus on things that you're dealing with in your life that are bringing up negative emotions, and visualize those things that you're sending to me, And and because of that, I ask people, if you want to visualize, you can visualize those experiences or energies as a dark cloud, and you can project it as coming out of the top of your head and send it to mine. And just do that continuously until we ask you to open your eyes. But if you don't want to focus on that, or you don't even have anything going in your life right now that you're particularly upset about, you can just simply sit there and intend that this dense energy that you're ready to release today be released, and that's good enough. Because like I said, there's a collective consciousness facilitating this. You can't do it wrong as long as you're here and willing to participate. But to whatever extent you want to visualize it or think about certain thoughts, that's okay. Either way it will work. In all the years we've been doing it, it's never failed. We can tell because Barb could tell if it wasn't working. And it's always worked, and it's worked in videos and audios and all kinds of things. So you don't have to worry about that. Anyone else? So I normally play a little music in the background, but I forgot my speaker, so I'm going to just play it anyway, but it won't sound very good. It'll at least help us to distract some of the background noise. So if you can all close your eyes. I'll have my eyes closed as well. Barb may be standing up or whatever she does to observe. And so close your eyes and relax, breathe comfortably, and just keep your eyes closed and continue to participate until we ask you to open your eyes. And I'm going to play a little music in the background in the meantime. So I'd like you to think about, if you'd like, think about anything in your life that's causing you stress or negative emotions. Or just say a prayer to your higher self or whoever you normally pray to. Or simply intend that whatever dense energy or dense karmic energy you're ready to release today be released to me. If you'd like, you can visualize that as a dark cloud leaving the top of your head. Send it to mine. And keep sending that until we ask you to open your eyes. Same time, I would like to ask you to receive a white light energy from my heart center to each of yours. And I will be transmitting that for the entire time as well. I'm going to be silent now until we're done. Everybody has different physical responses from that. Each of you are different manifestations of consciousness, so as unique as your physical bodies are, you'll experience this differently. Some people cry, some people laugh, other people feel temperature change, some hot, some cold. Majority of people who go through this experience will be tired for a couple of days or few days, based on your level of consciousness when we started, and how many times you've come to these events. So if you've been to these events many times, then the sensations you feel may not be as pronounced. A lot of times when somebody comes for the very first time, they notice the most intense physical sensations afterward. I've had some people who come to these events and they can't sleep for several days because the energy's very intense. So you may have different physical sensations, and if you're energy sensitive, you might have felt the energy. Sometimes people enter states of bliss during this process. Whatever happened or didn't happen, it's all good. It doesn't really matter, because the effects will still be there, and that we're able to see, or Barb's able to see. And we've always had that effect there. So what did you notice?
Well, Michaela, everyone that you channeled brought in this big, beautiful yellow, like I'll have to say dome that was through the room before we even started, So this dome kind of surrounded everybody, and you were here to hear, the first part of what I was saying. So it's like, even with all their colors, they were a little bit muted today because of this big dome of I would call it enlightenment, So everybody was surrounded by this dome of enlightenment, and yet the negatives were flying to you. And I watched you for a while, and it was like there was some grays and some blacks, and then it got to be which, you know, it was like get it away. And then it started to turning to like lavenders and greens. And so not only that, but it was like they were, you know, as well as healing themselves, they were trying to heal you, even though it, you know, the good stuff kind of went to him, and then it went bounced back because he didn't need to burn that up. So he was giving it back to you. So I was watching not only the normal, you know, the best way I can connection. It's like this little strand of light going to everybody, but it was beside anything that was positive because of the dome, you know, dome-like feel that you're channeling people have, you know, in set, you know, this time. Never seen it before. It's the first time. That it seemed like anything that was positive that everyone was trying to give to Ethann, you know, as well as the negative, went back to you to like what blesses one blesses all, you know. And that's kind of what it felt like today, you know.
Anyone have any questions or anything you want to share?
Thank you.
That was definitely different. So I didn't feel a white light coming towards me to my heart. I felt an energy coming, and when it hit me, it was a blossoming flower in vibrant colors. And it kept on coming at me. And when I was sending my negative thoughts, they just didn't matter. It just didn't matter. And I wasn't frustrated, but I was shocked because I've done this before. That didn't happen.
Very good.
I agree. I had a similar experience. There was just nothing coming out of me that so that was weird. It's not like my life's not perfect, trust me. But like I just couldn't, I think I just kept feeling the energy, but nothing was really coming out of me. It's weird. Different.
Did you ever see the movie The Green Mile?
Yeah.
With the big guy and then he glowed? Well, I saw like this shit coming out of my mind. And then I just kept choking. I mean, the coughing. And I'm sitting here trying to suppress this, and it's like, I'll just go with it, you know? But it was just like the, wow, which was really kind of cool. And then I had to remember towards the end, then it's like, okay, well, it's, you know, to really consciously accept the white heart connection back again, and then it kind of dissipated. Just so I'm sitting there thinking about movies, you guys are thinking about this. Maybe it didn't really happen that way in the movie.
Well, like I said, the colors coming towards them were a little different today, and everything was a little different today, you know. And the fact that you had a flower, you know, it's like that was a symbol of blossoming of your spirit. Yeah.
Well, like I said, everybody experiences it uniquely based on your own incarnation, your own experiences. You experience the flower, you experience stuff coming in your mouth.
We're not going to post this one, right?
Well, you wouldn't be on camera anyway, so.
Anyone else?
I don't ever feel anything. I don't know. I felt relaxed, you know, but not that I felt any energy, you know, exchange or anything like that.
Sure.
I initially saw a bunch of black, and then I laid back like that, and I saw a bunch of white, and then I went back down like this, and I saw a bunch of black with a red circle in the middle, and then I got like chills, like tingling, and then like almost like, I don't know, like a hug or whatever. Like I'm hot, like I'm hot.
Yeah.
And I was freezing.
Yes. Yeah.
I was rolling up my sleeves and like I'm almost sweating right now. Like it was cool.
Me too. When we first started, I was freezing, and then I like started sweating halfway through it. So yeah.
I still gonna be like the chills, you know. But I'm not cold, but it's like I don't know. It's like weird. So yeah.
Weird is good.
Yeah.
If you experience something, that's just for your rational, intellectual mind to validate that something happened. But it's not necessary that you experience something. There are a lot of people who don't feel anything. But the effects are still there. So what's the energy? What does everybody look like?
Well, they said the energy, you know, all their auras have increased, you know. But we still have, it's like we're still, and it's still here. This dome is here. I'm wondering if it'll just stay in the room for the next people to, maybe bless them too. I've never seen one hang on so strongly, so wow. I mean, your guides were really doing something today.
I don't see, but I was just telling Michaela, the minute I walked through the door, I was a little bit late. I was like 10 minutes after 1, and she had already started talking. But the minute I came in and sat down, I felt something really significant today, what I don't usually feel. But it was such a warmth, and I was like lifted to a higher dimension. As soon as I sat down, I was just totally taken to another place of energy, and so I must be feeling the golden light that you're seeing.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely a shift here.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's just, very powerful today. And even if you don't feel it, your soul already feels it,
Well, like she said, when I walked in, there was just a calmness in here. Because normally I can feel like if there's things that are just, like some kind of, out of balance thing, But it was just calming, just like, it's like I've been here before, that kind of feeling. It was just like, wow, relaxing, peaceful.
Home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Anyone else?
It might not be relevant, and I didn't realize it till now, but I had a lot of loud ringing earlier in here, which is gone in my ear, in my right ear. The only thing I noticed.
I have the opposite.
Yeah.
My ears are ringing now.
Oh, yeah. Mine also. Mine are ringing. But they've been kind of ringing on and off all day today. It seems like since I started today, it's like they got really intense and then it lightened down. It's like they're trying to talk to me and I'm trying to listen, I know you're there.
Ear ringing often, although in our medical institutions we see that as an illness, it's actually usually not. A lot of people who are awakening will hear ringing in their ears. And it's most of the time it is when you shift to a new vibration, a lot of people who are clairvoyant or clairsentient or clairaudient in particular actually will first start hearing ringing in their ears. It's just, the ringing is just a resistance to the receiving of some information. And eventually it will evolve into some kind of a spiritual gift or ability or whatever. Michaela always seems to have ringing in her ears whenever...
I'm glad you said that, because it's been now a couple of years. 2 years.
So it's probably you have some kind of resistance to it. Now if the ringing stopped from this process...
No, this is a loud one, only in the right. I always have a low, I didn't mention because it's been with me for 2 years in my left.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's not a bad thing. It's just a sign of something is trying to come through, but you're not yet ready to receive it. At some point, the ringing will probably stop and be replaced with a greater awareness of your reality. You may start channeling, or who knows, something.
I also noticed though electromagnetic fields too, though, for people who are sensitive. Like I'm very sensitive to electromagnetic fields. It took me a long time to understand that I can, like if I go, like when I traveled recently, I was in LA, big city. The second I got there, the ear ringing was so intense, and it's different than what I experience. It's more like an energetic guide connection. It hurts. It's uncomfortable, Yeah. So.
Yeah, that kind of ringing could be from EMF sensitivity. Anyone else?
Well, I had tears coming down and I couldn't, I wasn't necessarily sad or anything. I was trying to send the negative energy, what I was dealing with, and I just felt it going down. And I felt towards me coming it was a big ball, but it was more dark. It was like a big pulse around my head. And then it stopped. It was like green and black. and I felt like my scalp was going, like my hair was going up. Something.
That's good. That's very interesting. Well, when you experience emotion during this process, but you don't know where it's coming from, it's usually some sort of dense karmic experience that you've had. It may not even be from this life. It could be another life where something happened to you that was very emotional or saddening. And when that energy, the density of that energy is released in this process, the emotion will come through too. Even though you may not remember what it was, as it's being released, the emotion that was connected to it will be released. So that's why sometimes people will cry and they don't know why they're crying. So it's good. It meant something isn't there anymore. You obviously don't need to know what it was, but, so that's good.
I felt that touch on my head too. I think there was a guide in the room. I felt a guide come up behind me, and my hair felt like it moved too. Like I just felt like somebody was touching the back of my head, and my hair was moving. So I had that feeling too.
Do you have any sense of who?
Well, I always see your guide, your one guide, Muhammad. He's always here. But there's one female guide.
Mary, maybe? No?
Maybe, yeah.
I find I don't really talk about this very much, but I often end Michaela's channeling sessions with Mary Magdalene, because early on when she started channeling, Mary would come through a lot of times, and she says that I'm her child from a past life, so from when she was Mary Magdalene. So I have this, so when Michaela channels Mary for me, her face changes. Mary actually looks like my mother in the sense that she has this amazing, loving look on her face. And early on when Michaela was channeling, and when she channels on stage, her eyes are closed. She's unconsciously channeling. And Mary actually opened her eyes at one time to actually be able to see me physically in this incarnation. So I often bring Mary in as the end of her channeling sessions, just more for selfish reasons. But during this session, I had a feeling, which I don't usually have, that's not my superpower normally, but I had a feeling that she was actually present in the session.
Well, I could feel something, but they don't always show themselves to me, But I like I said, I felt it just felt so different today than it normally does, which is it's a good thing. It just shows that we're more involved. I mean, everybody looks happier now, so you've had something lifted from you that you didn't know consciously or subconsciously you were burdened with, and now it's lifted up, and so it just part of his gift is to make people feel happier, to uplift you. I mean, isn't it the thing that we do for each other is to help each other, we have conversations, that we laugh, we have joy, interacting with people. So it's kind of like that,
Yeah, as your consciousness grows, your happiness level increases. Doesn't mean you're not going to have a bad day or be angry or sad at different times, but as consciousness increases, your attachment to emotions is less, meaning you'll still experience emotions, but you won't carry those emotions along with you forever. So as your consciousness grows, this is why happiness increases, because you're not as affected as much as you would have been without that level of consciousness before. So that's something you should look at as a measure of progress. Even if you didn't feel anything today, just observe whether or not over the next couple of days and next few weeks, you notice that you're just generally happier and more sense of peace about your life. And even in situations where you normally wouldn't be peaceful, that you feel that way. I have a lot of people come to our events who are in bad relationships or marriages or something, or they have coworkers who irritate them to no end. And after this event, they'll be in that person's presence and they won't feel any irritation or emotional upset. And so those are kind of some of the manifestations you can observe. Anyone else? Yeah.
It's not related to this, but I believe this is a great forum to ask it. the phrase holding space for somebody. I mean, I've been through Reiki and have been given feedback of being a good space holder, and we're not there to say, for example, something's up with you, and we're not there to fix you. We could hold space energetically for you. What does that look like? I mean, I keep trying to get a visual of what that's meaning. It's like I'm doing something, but I don't know what that is.
How do you know you're doing it if you don't know what you're doing?
Well, other people, I don't feel energy either. I mean, I can do Reiki and I can feel my hands getting warm, but I can't feel reciprocated. Other people that feel energy give me feedback that I'm doing something, and I just keep figuring out.
So your question is, what is holding space?
Yeah, the whole phrase of holding space for somebody, what does that mean to you? Or have you heard it? Or?
Well, yes, a lot of people use that term who are not really holding space, but I can tell you what it means.
Well, what does it mean to you?
Yes.
I can figure out.
It's one of those spiritual terms. Yeah. It's a term that's used by people who most often can't hold space. But holding space means simply that you don't have to intend to hold space. But some people, for example, if you're at a certain level of consciousness, which all of you obviously are higher level of consciousness than the majority of people, or you wouldn't be here today. And so by your simple existence in a space, you're holding space. Because if your consciousness is higher, you vibrate at a higher level than the majority of people you're around. So let's say you're with somebody whose consciousness and vibration is lower. By simply you existing in that space, you're holding them to a higher level. So they may experience reality at this level of consciousness. You experience reality at this level of consciousness. When they're in your environment, they can't help but go higher. And so let's say that person is experiencing something emotional or some difficulty in their life. Well, they're experiencing it from this level of reality. And at that level of reality looks very different. By you being here, they move to your level of reality. And so it makes available to them an awareness that they couldn't normally have access to, which means that they can now understand their reality, solve problems, or even raise their consciousness to another level that they couldn't do on your own. So holding space simply means you don't have to do anything. If you're already of the consciousness, you can just simply, you're holding space everywhere you go. You don't actually have to intend to hold space. So if everybody's telling you you're doing this, well, you're probably doing it just because your consciousness is higher than everybody who you're working with.
But then that result, I appreciate the image of just the space. So it's allowing that person, again, a different perspective. I guess that's if it allows them to expand in a way that may give them different insight, or
it allows them access to a dimensional reality that they cannot on their own. So it's like, let's say, I've spent 23 years studying astrology. Now, if I start talking about astrology to you, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But what if I could just put my years of knowledge into your brain instantaneously? So you now instantaneously have access to all that I've ever learned. What's that?
Matrix.
Right. So
Movies.
the movies, yeah. Since you were talking about movies earlier, good example for this. So in that way, you are basically giving someone who cannot possibly access that level of awareness, instant access to that level of awareness, and on that level, there are connections to reality that they could never access on their own. And at that level, those connections allow them to solve their own problems and understand things. It's almost like they're plugging into a computer network that has access to a whole nother World Wide Web than the World Wide Web they have access to. And on that, when they plug into that, there's a wealth of information and knowledge that they could not ever have connected to on their own.
So it's kind of like walking in here and where you're at, emanating
Right.
out.
Yes. So when you're in this space with me and I'm doing the energy transfer, you're accessing a 13th dimensional reality, which you are not able to access on your own. So I don't really have to do anything. I can just sit here, and by sitting here, I'm holding space without actually doing anything. Now, the energy transfer just increases the intensity of it, so it makes it permanent. So not that you're all functioning at 13th dimension, you may not all, your physical and energy bodies may not be able to all handle that at this point, but the holding space we did here has a permanent effect on your energy body, where what you're doing may or may not, I don't know. This is what a lot of spiritual masters do. When people are in the presence of a lot of spiritual masters, they'll go into states of bliss and have altered states of consciousness and things like that. It's because that person is holding space, simply because their consciousness is already so much higher than the students in the room.
I thought, here's my deaf side, okay? When I do a specific aura reading with somebody, and I usually, I take time to just kind of get to know them so that they can relax, so I can see the colors. And then I ask them questions that I'm led to ask, and I help them, like you said, solve the problems, make them see, all they see is the woods. They don't see the path behind the woods, And so I help open up that path for other possibilities, and then I put the colors into those possibilities. And just like someone, I showed them, what do you really want to do? And before they were just so focused on what they were doing now and how it was making them so unhappy, that through communicating with them and showing them the colors and finding out what they really want, I was able to, like your problem solver, I seem to be the problem solver, was able to show them another way that would take care of part of this, what's bothering them now, but to expand their vision to actually find something that would make them happy and go back make themselves a problem solver, but go back to something that would meet their needs, what was good for their soul. So that's part of what I do, so that would be another way of saying holding space, And
you're only able to hold space to the level that you currently are. So so this is why a lot of people who use the term holding space are not really holding much space, because if their consciousness isn't high enough, then they're not able to really hold space at a level beyond where they are. So the people who they're talking to may very well be at a higher consciousness, in which case you can't really hold space for somebody who is already more advanced in their own development. Yeah.
Can I say it a little different too, just from my perspective? When you're holding space for someone, you're allowing them to do their own work, because people can't connect to their own guides sometimes, and we're all self-healers. So when you're holding space, you're actually allowing their guides to come in and do work on them that they can, you're allowing that space to take place where their guides can come in and do the work that they need on their physical structure, right? Like when I do a channeling for someone, I'm actually holding space to the point where I'm working with their guides. Their guides are coming in and giving them messages. It's not guides that I'm typically working with, like in this live session. I'm connecting to your energy, and those guides are going to come in to give you the messages that are really already within you. So you're facilitating. It's like holding space is facilitating, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question for Barb.
Okay.
So you said we all have aura, right?
Right. If you don't, then you're going to be going.
Have we ever lose our aura and bring it back?
What happens? It's usually within 3 hours, 3 to 5 hours before you're ready to transition. You'll lose it, and even though you don't know you're going to lose it, like an accident. I'll give you two for instances. I was driving. Well, I wasn't driving. My friend was driving. We were coming on 96 from Ann Arbor. Yes, 96, going to 23, and or is it 94? I don't know. I get mixed on all these. It doesn't matter. But anyway, this motorcycle was weaving in and out of traffic, and I told my friend he's racing to his death. And she said, what do you mean? I said, well, he doesn't have an aura. And I says, and he's racing to decide where he's going to die. And she said, how can you say that? And I said, I'm just telling you what I see. So about 4 miles up ahead, yep, there he was on the side of the road dead. And, and she said, well, Barb, I just blew her mind. I tend to do that with people. But, she said, how in the world do you see that? And I said, because he didn't have an aura, and he had this look on his face of fear, that even though he extruded, I know what I'm doing. I can drive this motorcycle. I can cut through traffic. But his aura and his presence was like, I'm not going to be around, I'm finding where I'm going to die. So, and then there's the instantaneous ones where I was by this big, huge truck, and the wheels were as high as my car, and right next to him. And I was taking my ex-husband to the doctor, and I told him, I said, oh my God, I said, can you imagine? I said, and that must have been a premonition. I said, those wheels are so strong. He says, if he hits somebody, he's going to kill them. And there was a van in front of him. And then we were stopping at these lights. It was one of those streets, South Boulevard. There's so many lights. And the one turned red, and I stopped, and he didn't. He came and he hit that van, and I watched the guy go like a washing machine, go around. And then he was going before, and then all of a sudden was poof, and he was gone, So that's the sudden death one, that your soul, spirit's in you when it's an unexpected death, but then it just jumps right out. There was no way that he could bring him back. He was just crushed.
Are there certain colors in the aura?
Well, everyone has a basic aura color, and the reason I said the basic is what each color has, the intent of what you would like to do, what would make you the most happy in doing. Like greens, a lot of times they want to be helpers, nurturers, like doctors, lawyers, something that they can do. Not lawyers, doctors. Yeah, most lawyers are tan. They are. They're a tan color because, well, it just that this. It makes them happy with what they do. But like lavenders tend to be a little on the naive side, but yet they also want to work with people. And blues, like he's got a blue cast to him. I love blues because they're the ones like, yeah, right. Until you actually prove it to them, then they go, all right, I'm on the bandwagon now, But they're harder. They're the ones that are the more difficult. They're always a challenge. So I think my favorite color is blue. But there's no favorite colors. There's no bad or good colors. It's just sometimes emotions come out where you'll walk by someone, you go, ugh, It's because they have so much negativity in them that you don't want to be around them. Go, oh, I've had that before too. Or they tend to have not good intentions, so, and that reflects on their aura too. But I'm sure you've been around people that you just think, oh my goodness, I didn't, I think I want to be able to take off. I don't want to be around here anymore. So, but.
Does aura have any influence on energy healing?
Not really. It's just, when you see aura photography, they have, you've got all multicolors because it's whatever emotions you're going through at that moment. But the core color is, is what you feel like that will make you happy and what path you should go on. And that's why when I do the readings and I go really look at people, I concentrate on seeing, what would make them happy. Like this one person, having issues with a situation that was causing problems with their spouse. And I found with what we're looking at their aura and finding out what they're interested in, finding out what would be a better solution, or it's just like you said, the guides, they're speaking with, I don't speak with the guides, but I'm still led in another path. You have the gift with, the guides talk to you. I have another gift where the colors talk to me, so it's all just the tools. It's different tools, same results, You're welcome. Anyone else?
Just one question back to the ringing in the ears. Like, I've noticed that since I was a child. And like over the summer I read a book, it's called Convergence Your Spirit Guide by Sylvia Brown, I think. And it said that it's your guides or your angels are sending you a message.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's usually what ringing in the ears is. But it could be that there's some kind of block there that's preventing you from hearing the message in a way that you can understand it. But the message is still coming through anyway, because the message comes through as energy. Even though Michaela's channeling, it's really just energy. So she receives energy, and her mind is able to translate some of that energy into words that you can understand. So it doesn't matter whether you can do that or not, but there's probably something going on where you're not able to convert that into something that makes sense to you, but the energy's still coming. You probably want to have something to say to that? No?
Yeah, sometimes that can happen overnight. I've had clients who come to me and they say they have ear ringing, and then they come to me a couple months later and they're channeling. It can happen that quick. It's like a raise in your consciousness or a shift in your dimension. You can actually tune that into something that's, relatable to you, words. So if you want to adjust that into something bigger, I just say continue to work on your consciousness, or if you want to visit like blocks and stuff like that, doing some healing work or something to see where that could shift that, but that's usually the case.
Yeah, it's a good thing though. It's just not.
Yeah, I feel peaceful when I hear it. Like I'm not like in a.
Yeah, there's a big difference between your guides versus the environment. When it's from your guides, it's not uncomfortable. It's just there.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing you can notice too is like if it has a pattern, like there's certain times of day where you hear ringing, or what else goes on in your body when you hear the ringing. So if your ears are ringing, and like maybe you'll notice, like for me, my left side lights up. Like my left leg will get really tingly when I know there's a message coming in from a guide. That's a good way to tune your senses in other areas, because if you're having trouble with the hearing, you might be able to pick it up something, like in your environment or in your body. Try to use other tools at those times to see what you can tune into.
Some of you may notice, and I maybe never paid much attention to it, but people tend to have a sound in their heads when their consciousness grows. It's sort of like static. It sounds like the static of a TV channel with nothing playing. And so if you're ever in a quiet space and you can tune into what you're hearing, that's something that very few people hear. I came across it many years ago because I always heard that sound, but I didn't really think of it as anything. But I got involved in. Any of you familiar with Ormus? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Ormus is a spiritual substance, and when it first started becoming popular, I started studying it and went to some conferences on it and such. And I was told by some of the people there that people who take Ormus hear this sound in their head. And until that point, I didn't really notice that it was anything unusual, but they said that most people don't hear that sound. So if by yourself in a quiet space, if you notice that you actually can hear a sound, it just sounds like just peaceful static, just noise, background noise in your head, and it sounds like it's coming from all around you at once, then that's a positive thing. It's just a sign of your consciousness and you're receiving some kind of energy or information from the universe.
You can say that people with a sense that, like deaf or blind, the other senses heightened. Or it's almost like as if your body's shutting down to where it's going to make a sound, so it deadens the environmental sound, so you can concentrate more on whatever's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's an interesting way to look at it, because all of you are at different levels of evolution, and your multidimensional genetics are activated more than the mainstream people, and because of that, you have access to abilities. And I mean, like Barb can see auras. Not everybody can see auras. Everybody has the ability, but not everybody can do it, because somewhere in her multidimensional DNA, that's been turned on. Everybody has that capacity to some degree or another, it's just not turned on. Michaela can channel because somewhere in her multidimensional DNA, that little function is turned on in our junk DNA. And it allows us to have access to different things. So people who are deaf or blind, their other senses heighten because it forces them to have to turn on other capabilities that they don't otherwise have to. And you're going to notice that. I mean, a lot of autistic children, they're completely dysfunctional in the three-dimensional world, and yet they can do amazing things that regular human beings can't do. You know, they can calculate mathematical numbers that are so large that the rest of us have to use calculators. Or they can, Michaela, she has a nephew who's channeling past lives all the time. And so, reading minds, yeah.
But he's classified as autistic.
Right.
He's brilliant. He's brilliant.
So your multidimensional DNA has infinite capacity, and if one human being is able to do things like that, that means all of us can. It just hasn't been turned on in everybody to an equal extent. But we're going to start seeing that happening now. More and more of our kids are going to be able to do things like that, and even adults, as we're raising in consciousness and our timelines are shifting. I mean, this is an amazing time to be alive. Just all kinds of incredible possibilities that have never been available before. Certainly not for tens of thousands of years. It's possible that maybe 25, 30,000 years ago that there was a consciousness here on the planet that was able to do things like that. But certainly not in our recent history has this been possible. So, anybody else?
Well, I guess something that I struggle with constantly is maintaining this awareness, like, consciously having this awareness. And, at time that I can, focus my thoughts and feel the energy and keep that energy with me constantly. But, the minute the work week starts, everything goes away, I'm back into that, zone where, until I feel myself like the energy is dissipating, then I realize, I need to pick myself back up. And I get constantly slipped into that. And it's like, how do you maintain where you don't slip constantly, that roller coaster,
Mm-hmm.
How do I?
Well, you're talking about two different things. One is consciousness, and the other is your human experience. Consciousness, whatever it is always there. So today your consciousness was raised a little bit, so your awareness now is different than when you came here. That's always going to be there. It doesn't matter whether you're in a good mood or a bad mood, that level of awareness and connection is always there. What you're describing is your mind and your brain and your emotions are interfering with your awareness of the consciousness. The consciousness is always there. My consciousness is always there. Doesn't mean I don't have a bad day. Okay, so my human self still has good days and bad days. But the consciousness is always present. It's always there regardless of how I'm experiencing my reality. So one thing you need to understand is that your awareness, the access to that awareness and consciousness is always there. Most people, their consciousness doesn't change that much in their lifetime. Nowadays that's different because the collective consciousness is accelerating so much. But there are certain techniques, of course, you can do to shift your connection to that awareness. The energy transfer is great. I mean, this process alone is going to help you to stay connected to that higher awareness better. You're not going to be as thrown off by things as you were before, but you're still going to be sometimes. And that's a constant process. It's your human experience. You came here to experience those ups and downs in order to experience what it's like to be here in this dimension and to experience emotions.
Right. If I may add this, but most of these ups and downs that we go through, it's all psychological, right? Because it's all created by our thoughts, which when we stop and think about it, really, it's not really real. But yet, we get sucked into this, this time warp, like, depressed, anxiety, fear, but it's all psychological. And we constantly are just traveling down that path, and it's like, I'm aware of that, but yet I can't seem to stop myself from going that path, down that path sometimes,
Yeah.
So it's like.
Well, experiencing emotions is not a problem. Even the most enlightened masters experience ups and downs in emotions. That's not the problem. The problem is attachment to those things that causes suffering. Attachment to anything causes suffering. All right? So attachment to material things causes suffering. You can have material things or not have material things. In either case, you may have suffering or not suffering depending on attachment. So what you're describing is an enlightened master will still have ups and downs like you're describing. The only difference is that they're not attached to those emotions. So when the emotions happen, whether they be positive or negative, they fully experience them, and then they move on to the next thing. The problem you're having is the moving on to the next thing, I think, if I'm understanding you correctly. Yeah, I mean, because it's part of your human experience to experience emotions. Why bother coming to this dimension if you're not going to experience emotions? You might as well stay in a higher vibrational dimension where things are much more positive. We came here to grow through this experience, and so there is no good or bad. You're simply associating an idea to something, saying, okay, well, if I'm in a bad mood, that's negative. If I'm in a good mood, that's positive. But in reality, there is no positive or negative. They're both good. And what makes it positive or negative is simply you're saying that it is. And it's making it positive or negative because you're attached to it and unable to escape it. On the other hand, if you could experience a negative emotion right now just for the fun of it, and then let it go in the next moment and experience another emotion just for the fun of it, what's the difference? It's just, you're just doing it for fun as a human being experiencing your reality. The problem is you don't have control over what you're experiencing. And that will go away, or rather improve, with your consciousness. So even after today, you should notice a difference in your attachment to those emotions. You're still going to have them, but you shouldn't be as attached to them as before, which will cause less suffering. So yes, you're going to be in a bad mood some days, or sad or happy, but you're not going to get stuck there as much as you did before. So give that a shot, see what happens, report back next month and let us know. Anyone else? All right, well, thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure spending a couple of hours with you today.
Thank you.